Well, hello and welcome everyone. If you are new to the channel, this is going to seem weird because I'm going to talk about something that you have not seen yet. So bear with me for this first bit, but do stay tuned in because it is important information. For all of you who are regulars on the channel, you're wondering why my trusty marker board is not behind me. Well, here's the deal, guys. For everyone that was watching that live stream, the PFL 7 live stream that I did with Cody Denk last week on Wednesday, the thing you might have noticed in the background going on just to my left here, your right, is there was quite a bit of things going on outside the window. What that was is a crazy storm that was like over 90-mile-an-hour winds, and it knocked out power to almost, I mean, a ton of the city, a ton of the people that live in this side of the state that I live in. And I still don't have electricity at my home after about 5 days. So I am at my girlfriend's place, which is where I was when I was recording that or when I was streaming that. But here we are now at her place again, where I don't have a marker board. We just got this lettuce behind me, which is cool enough, I guess. It's not quite the same as the marker board, but we'll make do. So for those of you that are wondering where the marker board is, it should be back next week because hopefully by then the power has been restored. Until then, you're going to get a breakdown that's not of my normal character. For those of you that are new to the channel, I do recommend watching this video so you can get my takes on this card, but also checking out my Dana White's Contender Series material that has been uploaded already. It is on the channel. There's a playlist for it, and in fact, you'll actually see it at the end screen of this video, so stick around until then. I apologize for the long intro, but that is going to be more of a better taste of what this channel's content normally is. So for you new people, check out the Dana White's Contender Series stuff at the end of this video. Click on the end screen, and that's going to take you to that. That's where you're going to get a vibe for what we're normally doing here. This is just, I don't have another way to get this content out. I don't have even lights at my home right now because there's no power. So even if I was there to record, you can't see the marker board. So we don't get the full Professor 138. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through this card using the UFC's website. We're going to do our best. It's rough, but it is what it is. So I know I've talked for a long time. Let's go ahead and get into this card. I do apologize for the lengthy intro. And here we go. So first matchup of the night, we have Stephanie Luciano, and she's taking on Talita Alencar. Now, for this matchup, this is a rematch from Dana White's Contender Series. In that matchup, sorry, my notes are on my lap instead of on the marker board. But in that original matchup, it was a draw, right? And the thing that was very clear in that matchup is that Luciano was the better striker. I don't think there's any arguing there. Luciano showed she was the far better striker, but Alencar showed that she was the far better grappler. So these two both have opposite skill sets, right? Alencar is now 1-0 in the UFC. She got a win, albeit controversial. I thought she lost. I thought Yana dos Santos beat her. But she got that win over Yana dos Santos in a matchup where she probably shouldn't have. But the judges favored her grappling style, even though she didn't really get as much grappling success as you'd like to see out of somebody who is a grappling specialist. However, Yana dos Santos would also probably beat the brakes off of Stephanie Luciano. So that is something to take into account. Alencar was able to get this fight to the mat twice, or for 2 rounds, basically, in their first matchup. Now, she failed on a ton of takedowns, but those were mostly late in the fight. Sure, there were some early, but it was mostly late. So what has changed in this matchup as opposed to the first matchup? What are we going to be looking at? Now, we don't know much about what's changed for Luciano. We haven't seen her since. But what I can say is that for me, it makes sense that Alencar is probably going to look a little bit better in this matchup for 2 reasons. One, she took that Dana White's Contender Series matchup on short notice. That is going to play into her favor here. She's going to be able to have a full training camp. She's not going to be taken on short notice, and she's going to have presumably better cardio. So we're going to trust in the cardio of Alencar there. We also know that she has had the success of a win in the UFC, even if it was controversial and she probably didn't deserve it. She did get the win. Luciano, haven't really seen anything since. I'm going to say Alencar gets this one done. I think she's going to be able to control the first 2 rounds, much like she did in the Contender Series matchup, but I don't think she's going to completely gas out like she did in that Contender Series matchup. And I think she may lose the 3rd, but I think she's going to be in it enough that she's able to survive and not get 10-8'd. So 29-28 is likely what I see for Alencar. It's not the most confident pick on the card. Alencar is undersized. I do not like that about her, but this is the smallest division she can fight in. Also, shout out to the UFC for Steffi Luciano not actually existing at 0 feet, 0 inches tall with a 0-inch wingspan and 0 inches in the leg reach. So that's really interesting. But we can move on to the next fight. So after criticizing the UFC's website, whatever. Let's look at this one here. We have Yousseff Zalal taking on Jarno Errens. I don't think this is actually the bout order. Maybe it is. UFC's website is very strange. But we're going to run with it, right? So we have Yousseff Zalal, and he's taking on Jarno Errens. In this one here, when I look at my notes, I see a couple of things that stand out to me. First things first, I think Jarno Errens is a pretty good striker. He showed a lot of success. He has very good kicks. Those are probably his best weapon. He's got kicks to all levels, and he's shown he can actually strike pretty well in his last matchup against Stephen Nguyen. He did a very good job in that matchup. However, he's going against Yousseff Zalal, who is a complete fighter. But Yousseff Zalal is going to have just a severe grappling edge in this matchup. Yousseff Zalal should be able to get this fight to the mat whenever he wants to. He should be able to control this fight on the mat, and he should be able to stay safe on top to not get subbed from Jarno Errens. I don't think Jarno Errens is a sub threat. Just throwing that out there, not in this one specifically, but in general. But Yousseff Zalal should be the better fighter everywhere. On the feet, it's close. Jarno Errens is a pretty good striker, and he showed that in his last matchup. But it's just the different levels of competition, it's not that close. Yousseff Zalal is probably getting this fight done. I think he's going to get it done by grappling. I think he could probably get a submission here. But yeah, so for me, Yousseff Zalal is the easiest pick to make on the card, and that's not because Jarno Errens isn't good. It's because Yousseff Zalal is very good, and I am pretty high on his skill set, especially at this point in his career. All right, we move on. We got that one out of the way. This one actually gives me a lot to talk about. We're going to see how this comes into play. We have Jhonata Diniz taking on Karl Williams. Now, okay. Here's the thing. A lot of people bring up the damage over control argument. Damage over control, yes, that is the criteria, but something we haven't seen in practice is 3.5, 4 minutes of a round, but gets beat up a bit in the first minute. We haven't really seen the judges give it to that person that lands the strikes in the first minute and then just gets laid on for 3.5, 4 minutes, because it's okay. Hold on. Caveat to that. There is a bit, if like they bust them open and there's a lot of blood coming, different stories. Sometimes you can see them go damage over control in that sense. Or if they drop them, like knock them down, but then the person that gets knocked down is able to like grab a hold of a leg and drag the fight to the mat. That sometimes is different. But say the person on the feet lands some decent combos, hits them with a couple of shots, but doesn't do anything to knock them off their feet or to bust them open. A lot of times the person that gets 3.5, 4 minutes of control time, even if they don't do anything with it, just control and like the weakest of like body, head, just to get the ref not to stand them up, they still seem to get the nod on that round. Why do I think that's important here is because I think Jhonata Diniz is going to probably, I don't think it's going to be crazy to say that he's a better striker. Karl Williams has a decent jab, quick one too. His striking's set up by his grappling, but the far better striker is going to be Diniz. Dude is a knockout artist. He probably, if he wins, gets a first round knockout. And I don't think it's crazy to say. Everybody else will probably tell you the same thing. But what they won't tell you is that even though they say it's damage over control, the scores don't reflect that unless the damage is really, really significant. If you control someone for 3.5, 4 minutes, like I think Karl Williams will be able to do in these rounds, they're not giving the nod to the other guy. So I'm taking Karl Williams here. I think he's going to be able to land enough on the feet to set up his takedowns just because of that threat of the takedowns. And I think his entries are pretty solid. I know Diniz is probably going to be the bigger guy as far as like size. Karl Williams is not a small guy by any means. He's like 6'3". If these, height and reach information bits are to be, looked at accurately, they're very close in size, but Diniz is going to be probably heavier. Karl Williams, though, I think he's got better gas tank. I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns. I think he's going to be able to control this fight more often than not. So taking Karl Williams, I like that pick quite a bit, short of him just getting caught and knocked out early. We move right along. We have Karol Rosa, Pannie Kianzad. Pannie Kianzad is probably the cleaner striker in this matchup. But Karol might actually put out more volume, and that's crazy to me because Kianzad also has quite a bit of volume when she's in there. When I look at these two, I was actually looking at my notes in detail about these two based on not only their previous fights, but stuff that I noticed kind of just in the stats. And yeah, both of these two have a very, very high output. The thing that strikes me as weird is like in my notes, I have Kianzad as a better striker overall, especially at range. She's got better kicks, puts together the better combination. She sticks her jab with a lot of frequency. But the thing that I think Karol is able to do better than Kianzad is she's going to be sticking to the leg kick. She's going to have more forward pressure. And although she's going to eat shots, her volume is ridiculous. Here's the other thing. When this fight comes to everything outside of the striking, although Kianzad is cleaner, Karol she's going to be able to pressure forward and possibly get that cage push going on because I do think that she's going to be able to muscle Kianzad up against the cage. Both ladies have seen success doing that in the past to their opponents. I think Karol is going to be able to do a better job of that against Kianzad here. I think the fight goes to the mat. It's because Rosa took it there, not because of Kianzad. So for me, I got to go with Karol to get this one done. Volume, pressure, and being able to mix in the grappling when she needs to. So for me, Karol is the pick. It's a competitive fight though, and like I said, Kianzad's probably the cleaner striker, but I don't think it's enough to win that fight. Johnny Parsons, Yusaku Kinoshita, I believe that fight is off, so we're not going to bother with that fight. We go on to the next one. Toshiomi Kazama taking on Charalampos Grigoriou. For Charalampos Grigoriou, he's coming off that loss to Chad and Helliger where he just couldn't get it going. He got beat everywhere by Charalampos Grigoriou. Out-wrestled, outstruck. Sorry, if you haven't noticed, I'm a little lost without my marker board. But for Toshiomi Kazama, you think, okay, this guy's also coming off a couple of losses. Something to take note of, though. His debut in the UFC was against Rinya Nakamura, who, I mean, he's pretty good, if you ask me. The guy's undefeated. He's looked great so far. Yes, he's, hasn't looked like the top prospect in the division, but he's looked pretty good, and he's undefeated. So for Toshiomi Kazama to lose to Rinya Nakamura, I don't fault him too bad. Who else did he lose to? Well, he lost to Garrett Armfield. Garrett Armfield's a pretty good fighter. I understand people are down on him because he lost to my guy, Brady Heastan. Brady's a dog, and Brady should be undefeated in the UFC, but he got robbed against Ricky Tercios. Heastan is probably going to he's the type of guy that can beat just about anybody on any day, especially in that third round. So Garrett Armfield, he might have lost a little bit of stock in that one, but still, Garrett Armfield, I think he's better than Charalampos. I think he's better than anybody that Charalampos has fought in the UFC, which is basically Chad and Hugger. I think that is it's just a tough run in the UFC for Kazama. I'm not giving him a total pass. He, got knocked out in the first round, I believe, against both of them. So there is that. But we have to talk about the competition here because I think that skews people's opinions quite a bit. This matchup, it's clear. Charalampos Grigoriou is going to be the better striker in this matchup because Kazama's striking leaves a lot to be desired. However, Kazama's the better grappler. And you're going to get a lot of people that say that that's not the case. They're going to say Grigoriou trains at that Longo, Weidman, Sarah Longo, whatever it is, gym with Aljamain and with Marab and all those guys. I understand, but here's the thing that people, they put a lot of weight into where people train, but at every gym that has a lot of really good fighters, they also have a lot of fighters that just aren't that level. And just because you train at a gym does not mean you get the skills of all the other fighters there. I have a lot of people that have trained at gyms I've trained at before that just are always bad. They never get better. And I'm not saying that's Grigoriou. I'm just saying you can't use that as the reason you're taking him to be the better grappler in this matchup. I think Kazama's the better grappler, and I think he's a better grappler by a pretty high margin. I think Grigoriou is a better striker, and I think he's a better striker by a pretty high margin. He's going to be able to put kicks together, punches and kicks together. He's going to be able to pretty much land at will against Kazama. However, if Kazama gets this fight to the mat, he's going to be able to control him, and I think he could even be alive for a submission at some point because Grigoriou has shown that he can start to fade as fights go on. For me, it's a tough one to call. I understand why a lot of people are picking Grigoriou. I'm going to be probably the only person taking Toshiomi Kazama, and I think it's because what's going to happen here is he's going to be able to get the fight to the mat in the first round after probably eating a couple of shots. He's going to be able to control Grigoriou. Grigoriou is going to try to work his butt off to get back to his feet. He's going to struggle. Maybe he gets there at the end of the round, but I think he's going to really struggle. And I think in the second round, that takedown is going to come easier. And I think in the third round, it's going to come even easier. And we get Toshiomi Kazama to get himself a decision win over Charalampos Grigoriou by taking the back and backpacking him, much like Aljamain Sterling does, someone who Grigoriou trains with, supposedly. I know at the same gym. So I'm taking Toshiomi Kazama. I'm not very confident in that pick. I don't think that you should be going out and putting your hard-earned money on this one. But I will say that I think Kazama is very live for a win here. And I think that this is a matchup where I think he can get this one done. So I'm going to take him. Look at the next one. We have Allan Nascimento. It's Allan, right? So Allan Nascimento taking on Jafel Filho. Tough one to call. And let me tell you why. So, knee-jerk reaction is you're like, oh, yeah, Allan Nascimento's the guy. But the reason this is a tough fight to call is he's been away for quite some time, about a year and a half or so, and guys coming off of long layoffs have not done as well in recent memory as you'd like to see if you're going to be picking one of them, especially as a decent-sized favorite, which Nascimento is. Jafel Filho has looked pretty gosh darn good in his last few fights. Yes, he lost to Muhammad Mokaev, but he had a lot of success in that fight as well. His grappling is fantastic, as is Nascimento's. His striking is gosh darn good, and he hits very hard. Here's the thing. I think Nascimento is going to be a tiny bit better in the area, in the grappling. And I think Filho is going to be probably the more powerful striker, but not necessarily the better striker. I think it's a really tough fight to call, honestly. I'm going to side with Nascimento, with the caveat being that I am nervous about him being away for so long, and I don't like the way that pairs up, right? So I caution you, and I tell you to probably stay away from this fight in regards to betting. If you don't listen to me, that's your problem. Maybe you're still going to get it right. That's totally cool. Filho is very live to get this one done. He's very live for the knockout. In the grappling, I don't think either guy submits the other one unless there's a club and sub involved. I think either guy is live for that. But for me, I'm going to take Nascimento. I feel like he's a little bit more proven commodity, but then again, he hasn't been around for a while. Sounds like he's had some injuries. I don't feel good about it. So I'll take Nascimento, but this one gives me a lot of red flags. We're going to go with him, though. Next, we move right along. Here we go. This fight. Guys, I've said it plenty of times. Chelsea Chandler's biggest skill set is that she's just big and strong. And I understand that sounds mean, that's the best skill she has, but that's not all she's got. It's close to all she's got. She's big and strong. She hasn't shown a lot of skill in the UFC, and she's beaten people that weren't very good or very one-dimensional. And I think Yana Santos is pretty good. I believe she beat Karol Rosa in her last matchup. She probably got robbed. I think she landed the better strikes. Volume was close, but she landed the much better strikes. Santos is a clean striker. She's decent enough in the grappling. Chandler's going to be bigger, though. She's going to be able to get takedowns at some point. I just don't know how early she's going to be able to get them. Santos has kind of put on some muscle lately. And, she's married to Thiago Santos, who, he's been known to put on some muscle through some nefarious means. So maybe Santos is going to come in looking swole. I don't know. I think Santos is the better fighter, though, and I've got to take her here. I just don't think Chelsea Chandler is that good. And I feel mean saying that. I try to always give every fighter their flowers, but I just have a hard time finding things that Chandler's good at other than being big and strong. And that is mean to say. I understand, but I have to go with the fighter that I think has a complete skill set. She's a decent striker, decent grappler, better striker than grappler. Yana Santos is actually a pretty decent fighter, and she's only lost to, recently anyway, to really tough competition. So I'm taking Yana Santos. I feel like she should be a decent favorite here, but she's not. So we're going with Santos. I understand if somebody wants to pick Chandler just for her size, but that's not usually how you want to pick fights. Next, we have Damon Jackson. He's taking on Chepe Mariscal. His name was Jose Mariscal. And then he just started going back, and Chepe was his fighter name, but it's on the UFC website. So anyway, Chepe, dude still looked great in the UFC so far, even in his last matchup where he probably didn't win, but he got the win. I had a bet on him, so I'm cool with that. But when they were reading the scorecards, I was very nervous that he was not going to get that one, but he did. You guys know that I'm a big Damon Jackson fan, probably one of the bigger Damon Jackson fans you're ever going to find on YouTube. Damon Jackson, my boy. And let's be honest here. This is a tough fight for him in the striking department, but in the grappling department, although Mariscal's a very good grappler, I think Damon Jackson is a better grappler for MMA. I think Damon Jackson, if he can get this fight to the mat, can do what he needs to do to win rounds. However, if he gets stuck on the feet, he is very hittable, and he has been finished quite a few times. Damon Jackson is a guy that you never can count out because dude can go out there and get wins over some of the better guys in the division. Not, like top 5 guys, I'm saying, but like some guys that you don't expect him to. Everybody was against him against Alex Hernandez. Everybody was saying Hernandez was going to beat Jackson. I said no. I said Damon Jackson's my guy. He's getting this one done. He got it done. The judges were a little weird in that fight. Split decision. I don't think it was. I think it was pretty clear to me. Damon Jackson won that fight easily, but judges going to do what judges do. Damon Jackson probably should be the underdog in this fight, probably not by this much. I think Damon Jackson actually gets this one done, and I love it as for a bet. I think he's a fantastic fighter. As far as UFC experience, he's got more of it. As far as just wins in the UFC, he's got more of it, although Mariscal's looked pretty good so far, some of them being odd wins. I think this line is ridiculous. I think Damon Jackson, at the very least, is like a plus 130 underdog in my head. I don't think he should be anywhere near plus 200. He was plus 190 something, I think, just when I looked last. We're going Damon Jackson. I think he outright wins this fight. I think he gets takedowns. I think he gets control time, and I think he is live for submission. He's also live to just ground and pound his way to a victory there. But realistically, it's probably either a decision or submission. So we're taking Damon Jackson. I like him quite a bit. He's probably my favorite underdog on this card. Honestly, I think the value is all there. Now, this fight is off, so I don't know why this fight is on here either. But it's supposed to be. See, I'm gonna make sure I get the name right. It's Danny Barlow versus Nikolai Veretennikov, I think is how you pronounce it. Veretennikov. So we're just gonna leave this screen up because the UFC is horrible at updating their website apparently. But Danny Barlow, we're gonna just pretend that this is Veretennikov. This is over here on the Eros Medic side. So for Veretennikov, he's a very powerful striker. He's got a good 2-3, good 3-2, can reverse it, throw it forward, throw it in reverse, whatever. He's going against Danny Barlow, who's a guy that has a 79-inch wingspan, hits like a truck, throws a lot of just heavy 1-2s down the pipe. That left hand, they call him left hand to God for a reason. Dude's got some serious power in his left hand. I remember I picked against him on the Contender Series thinking he was going to get out-wrestled by Raheem Forrest. He knocked Raheem Forrest silly. Danny Barlow did not waste any time going down to the comments to let me know that I was making a bad choice there. So shout out to Danny Barlow for getting me, you proved me wrong in that one. I was on his side back when he went against Quinlan, and justifiably so, he beat the brakes off Quinlan. So now he's fighting a guy that's really tough in Veretennikov. Did I get that right? Veretennikov, is that how you say it? Yeah, Veretennikov. I think that's how you say that. Sometimes when I do the tape, I watch it with the volume off because my girlfriend's sitting there like reading a book or something, and that's what happens. But so for Veretennikov, he is very live for a knockout in this fight, but I think both guys are going to stand and trade. That's what they like to do. They both like to strike, and I think that's a good matchup for a guy that's going to have a longer wingspan than Danny Barlow by 5 inches or something like that. I wish we had the stats up on the screen for Veretennikov. We just don't because the UFC is pretty bad at updating their stuff. I think Danny Barlow is going to land first, and he's going to land hard. He keeps his power late, as we saw against Quinlan. I got to go Danny Barlow. I understand the line's a little wide. I don't blame you for taking a shot on the underdog. He is live for a knockout. Anybody that hits that hard can get the knockout. Danny Barlow is hard to bet against in this matchup, especially against a guy coming in on short notice. So we're taking Danny Barlow, probably by knockout, but it's hard to say. Chris Gutierrez, Javed Bashara is off as well, so we lost that one. And here we are in, I guess this is the main event. We'll recap it a bit at the end, but yeah, this is the main event already. This is a short fight card. We've had some fights fall off last minute. So here we are. We have Marcin Tybura, Sergey Spivac. Now, Sergey Spivac is coming off that loss to Cyril Gane where he looked horrible. Just absolutely beat pillar to post. That's a tough fight for anyone that doesn't have any striking, and Spivac doesn't really have the best striking. Tybura, he's looked pretty good outside of, when he fought Tom Aspinall and just got whooped. But he's looked pretty good otherwise. Tybura, although getting older, was like 38 at this point, he's a heavyweight, so you can get away with that. This fight already took place a handful of years ago, 4-ish years ago, probably. 5, 4, 3, somewhere in there. I think 4. Tybura won pretty convincingly, I'd say. And what's changed since then? Yeah, obviously they both have leveled up some since then. They've rounded out their toolbox. Spivac has probably gotten a little bit better in the striking, but not that much. He's probably gotten a little bit better with his takedowns, but he's going against a guy that's really hard to take down in Marcin Tybura. I don't understand why Tybura is the underdog here. He won the first fight. I understand he's 38, but he's looked pretty good recently. If I pull it, I'm going to pull up another tab just to make sure I've got this number right. But for me, Tybura is the type of guy that you have a hard time beating in the UFC outside if you're outside of the a top prospect. Who has he lost to in the UFC? He lost to Tom Aspinall back in 2022. We know that. And he's lost to Alexander Volkov back in 2021. Alexander Volkov has looked fantastic in the UFC, especially recently. Other than that, the last time he lost in the UFC, the last time Tybura has lost in the UFC is clear back in 2019. That's the before time. That's the long ago, fellas. We are looking way back, and he's done a darn good job ever since then. Yes, I understand he had a rough stretch in there where he was like, lost 2 in a row, won 1, lost 2 in a row. It's rough, but he's looked very good ever since. I think he's a much more complete fighter. And in the UFC, he's got a winning record over, some decent competition. This is going to be a horrible, boring fight, in my opinion. I think what's going to happen is we're going to get a lot of cage push. I think we're going to get a lot of Spivac pushing Tybura up against the cage and then getting reversed against the cage, and then Tybura holding Spivac against the cage and controlling him there for an extended amount of minutes. And I think the judges are going to favor Tybura holding him there for an extended amount of minutes. I think he's going to be the fresher fighter as the fight goes on. And we're probably going to get a 25-minute decision where neither guy really does a whole lot of anything. And Tybura has just done a lot of cage pushing. That's what I see. If it does stay at range, I favor the nice jab, essentially, of someone like Tybura over Spivac, who just kind of throws wild hooks and stuff, trying to get in tight and grab hold and try to throw you down. So it's got to be Tybura. I understand that Spivac's younger, but I got to go with Tybura. Let's go ahead and double check to make sure we didn't miss anything, because we are going off the UFC's website, not anything of my own. We're going to make sure we got all these fights. We got 1, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Yep, we got all 10 fights. There's only 10 right now because the fights have been canceled. So we nailed it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Sorry again for this video. It's weird circumstances. The electric company is working their butt off to try to get power back to everybody. But like I said, it's been over 5 days, and I'm not holding my breath thinking it's going to come back tomorrow. So we're getting this video out now. It's not going to be a normal. I'm not going to do this stuff. So don't worry. We're getting back to the marker board. We're getting back to all that hopefully next week, assuming I've got electricity. So thank you guys for watching. Click on that Dana White Contender Series playlist that's probably popped up on your screen already, and I will catch you all down the road.